Welcome to this edition of Firecast, and I've had the honor of speaking to one of the keynote presenters here at the Micro-Credential Summit hosted by KVAC, Matt Dunleavy, and he works at Radford University, and he's a director of a very exciting program. So, Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And just tell us what your program is and what type of work you're doing.
Sure. So our president of Radford University, President Hemphill, has an extraordinary vision and asked me and a team of my colleagues to really look at how Radford University could serve the Commonwealth of Virginia and the contiguous states with workforce development. And so what we did is we immediately set out two objectives. One, we wanted to empower working adults throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia and other states with career advancing skills. And we also wanted to strengthen our partners' workforce so that they could advance in the market. And so over the last year and 3 months, we've been able to launch a cybersecurity certificate, which trains IT professionals as well as career and technical educators in cybersecurity to keep data secure. We're also launching a geospatial intelligence certificate. And then, of course, the context for this particular conference is the Appalachian Support for Specialized Education Training, or ASSET program, and we're training 5,000 teachers throughout Appalachia in inclusive practices.
Okay, that's great. And so, micro-credentials. What is the value of doing micro-credentials, and what work are you doing in that area?
So we're seeing a national move away from large degrees. And so it's called different things, unbundling of the degree. You're seeing different things come out of that, micro-credentials, nano degrees. But the overarching movement seems to be that there's a hunger in the market as well as with professionals for smaller units of instruction that are just in time, that are competency based, meaning it's focused on a specific job skill, that can be personalized, that can be shared. And so that we're seeing this advent of micro-credentials and nano degrees, and the Impact Lab at Radford University is actually doing just that. So we're not offering a full degree, we offer a certificate in cybersecurity, and we're going to unbundle that certificate into even smaller units of cybersecurity training. On the asset side, we're designing approximately 50 micro-credentials in various areas, and we're organizing them by stacks. And so an educator could actually go through a stack of micro-credentials in a specific area that'll give them the skills they need to be effective in the classroom.
Can any of these micro-credentials lead to degrees?
They could, and it would depend upon the policies of the host institution. But for example, within Radford University, our cybersecurity certificate actually is an 18 credit hour degree or a certificate, and that could be transferred into a larger degree. On the asset side, in year 2 and 3 of our grant, we will be awarding graduate credit for the micro-credentials, and those could be transferred into another institution or Radford University towards a larger degree.
I know you have two outstanding U.S. senators, Senator Tim Kaine and Senator Warner.
Absolutely.
And I noticed that I saw some comments where they bragged about the Impact program, the work that you're doing.
Yes. We've been very fortunate. We have outstanding leadership in the Commonwealth of Virginia, both our senators and our representatives. And so we were thrilled to receive that recognition from Senator Warner, Senator Kaine, and we also had the honor to meet Governor Northam just a few short weeks ago. And so we're very excited about how we can serve the Commonwealth of Virginia for both workforce development as well as education and professional development.
The cybersecurity seems like that is right now it's on our minds because of some things that have happened in our nation related to other nations' involvement in some of our affairs. What type of program is it? What are the things that you're dealing with?
So you've got, cybersecurity is an everyday reality for us, and that includes just knowing what a secure password is at a very low level for individuals like you and I, but it also includes, C-level executives executives have to know what are the questions they need to be asking their IT staff to keep the data secure in like a Fortune 500 company. And so it runs the spectrum in terms of the needs. Our certificate is specifically geared towards the IT professional within a company or organization who is responsible for keeping the data secure. We actually work with quite a few K-12 districts, and they usually send 1 to 3 of their IT staff. This would be the director of IT at a local school district. What we've also noticed is that they're starting to send through career and technical educators or teachers who are responsible for teaching IT and teaching cybersecurity within the K-12 environment. And so the cybersecurity certificate that we have designed is geared towards both of those populations.
Okay, yeah. And of course, I know with Senator Warner being on the Senate Intelligence Committee, I would think that he has a particular interest in this type of work too.
Sure, and he comes out of a rich history of entrepreneurship and IT innovation himself. And so, not only is he an outstanding senator and a leader, but he really does, know what he's talking about when he's speaking about innovation and entrepreneurship within the context of Virginia, but also nationally. He's a very good leader.
And you use that word entrepreneurism because of with micro-credentials, that, it takes an entrepreneurial spirit on behalf of the educators as the people helping create those credentials.
Absolutely. I think we're in early days, as I said in my talk. It's easy to think that we've got it figured out, but I'll be candid, we don't have it figured out. And I'm not speaking to Impact specifically, although that's true, but just nationally, we have to really figure out how can we best prepare our teachers? How can we best prepare our workforce to ensure that they have the best skills they need to do the job, whatever that job may be, from teaching a kid fractions within a classroom to keeping data secure at a large company. Entrepreneurship and innovation are absolutely key for us to keep in mind and to have part of our ethos, to acknowledge that we're really still figuring things out. What does the future of micro-credentialing look like? What does the future of competency-based education look like? The answer is we don't know, but it's honestly an honor in some ways, and I'm very grateful to be in this space and working with such a great community, such as the individuals at KVEC, to try to figure this out together.
For parents, what is the value of our teachers participating in summits like this and getting micro-credentials?
Well, for me, the biggest takeaway is, the biggest benefit would be your child. And I have a 10-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old boy. And, my wife and I are obviously very engaged in their education. So as a parent, I know that that's top of mind for a lot of parents. And so the benefits of a micro-credentialing process for that child's teacher would be that teacher would be able to really receive the type of professional development and training that they need based upon their professional goals, as well as their performance, to really reach and teach all children, including that parent's child in the classroom.
I was able to listen to a portion of your presentation, and you got some very good questions.
Oh yeah,
from people. So, describe this summit. What is the value of it, and tell us a little bit about the participants.
Well, I'm completely impressed with the participants, both in terms of who's in the room, but also the collegial and open atmosphere that I think really starts with Jeff and Robert. I think Jeff and Robert really set the tone early on when they introduced this, and obviously they've been very thoughtful about putting the invite list together. And so it's an extremely accomplished audience. It's also an extremely intelligent and curious audience that, to my mind, speaks to that collegial atmosphere that KVEC has established. And I think it's, for me, a special treat to be in the heart of Appalachia, really doing some of the most cutting-edge work, with people such as KVEC, that's driving a national conversation.
One of the questions that was asked was some comments that you made about how right now how students are learning and how they use their own devices, and they're so immersed in so many things, whether it's the virtual reality and other type of special programming. But there's some questions about how helpful is that to the mind.
Yeah, and I think that's a rich field of research. I'm not a neuroscientist, and so I certainly can't speak with any level of expertise in terms of what are the impacts of these different technologies on the brain. I can speak to some of the research that's emerged, and I would say that we have a lot to learn. The brain is. 40 years ago, the brain was seen as a very static organ. I think our current understanding of the brain is very dynamic. It changes with pruning and branching with various stimuli that come in. So there seems to be no question now that how we interact with the world impacts our brain and the growth thereof. I think the open question is, what do these technologies really do to the brain? And I think we need to do a lot more research to be conclusive about how these technologies are impacting our cognition and basically the circuitry of the neural pathways. I just don't think we know, quite frankly. I think there's some strong opinions out there, but we obviously need to continue, and not my team, but rather neuroscientists need to continue to do research in this area with cognitive scientists. But we also have to keep in mind that it seems to be a very resilient organ, and these tools aren't going anywhere. Virtual reality is not going anywhere. Augmented reality is not going anywhere. Mobile devices, ubiquitous computing, artificial intelligence, machine learning, all of the data analytics, all of these fields are only going to grow and become a larger part of our life. And we need to figure out a way to manage it and leverage it and not necessarily be afraid of it, because regardless of our own personal opinions of social isolation or some of the things that we've seen are potentially negative, the reality of the situation is this is our environment now, and we need to figure out how to optimize it for learning and interacting with each other, and we can't default into a fearful stance, because it's not going anywhere.
Well, as you mentioned, the brain is a very dynamic organization. Organ, and we're learning more about it. We have to continue learning. We're lifelong learners. I know I just saw a report about Alexa. How right now it's so easy for people to use Siri or Alexa, say, "Oh, I can't remember something. What is the answer?"
Yeah.
Instead of thinking. Instead of using our own brain to work our brain in order to understand.
Right.
Because if we don't do that, we can affect our cognitive ability.
Sure, but think about this from a historical perspective. That is an ancient argument, and I guarantee the first bards, the Homeric bards, who had to memorize literally thousands and thousands of lines, when they first saw the first scroll, had that same argument that, well, now you don't have to remember all of this. You can just write it down on a scroll, and therefore you're going to see a degradation in our ability to memorize. And that may have been true, but my point is, this is not a new argument. With the evolution of every technology, we see this argument of, well, it's not as good as what we're doing now. And I think we need to be very conscious of the fact that there's pros and cons to every adoption of every new technology. And so do I think that it changes us in some ways in terms of behavior? Absolutely. Do I think it changes us in terms of neuroscience? I don't know. It's not my area of expertise. The research I've seen says potentially yes, but there are also huge upsides. Voice technology alone, the convenience, the gaining back of your own time. I can say, Alexa, put celery on the grocery list, and suddenly that's on the grocery list. I now no longer have to write that down. That's a small example. Or Alexa, remember my mom's birthday and send her some flowers. That saves me time and emotional costs, as you can imagine.
Yeah. Well, Matt, your impact program is very valuable and doing some great work. Do you have any plans to expand what you're doing?
Absolutely. I mean, our goal really is quite ambitious. We want to become national providers of competency-based training in cybersecurity, geospatial intelligence, and education. We're starting regionally, obviously, within the Commonwealth of Virginia and hopefully within Kentucky and some other states. But our goal is to become national providers of competency-based training, and we look forward to that opportunity.
Well, thank you so much for coming to Hazard,
absolutely,
and thank you for being part of our program
Yes,
today.
sir. Thanks for having me.